Iraqi and Kurdish troops make headway in the battle to seize control of Mosul from Islamic State fighters. Tearful scenes as 21 recently released Chibok schoolgirls are reunited with their families. And the sweetest catwalk in the world. And more surprises from the International Chocolate Show in London. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin in Iraq, where at this hour heavy fighting is ongoing in and around the embattled city of Mosul as Iraqi forces battle Islamic State militants in a much anticipated ground offensive aimed at retaking the northern city from the extremists. Kurdish leaders report that there have been some early successes on the battlefield. U.S. officials have described the mission as a decisive moment in the campaign against Islamic State, which has suffered a series of defeats and is largely confined to the Mosul area in Iraq. But Lieutenant General Stephen Townsend, who commands a U.S.-led coalition targeting Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, cautions that it could take weeks or even longer to recapture Mosul. Now, the campaign is the largest military operation in Iraq since U.S. forces left 5 years ago. An upbeat Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi declared Monday that his nation will celebrate victory as one.
Soon we'll be together in Mosul and we'll raise the flag of triumph, and there will be no place for Daesh among us and among the true Iraqi families. We came to rescue from terrorism and Daesh. All attempts to delay to free Mosul failed, as with Ramadi, Fallujah, Tikrit and Beji and many other cities in Iraq.
Well, the battle for Mosul has put civilians in a tenuous position. Mosul residents contacted by phone and Skype say Islamic State fighters have blocked major roads and bridges in and around Mosul. They also say the terrorists have fanned out throughout the city and planted mines and explosives, warning civilians not to try to leave. Joining us now via Skype from the Pentagon is viewers Jeff Saldin. Jeff, what more can you tell us about this coalition operation, knowing that this assault has been expected for weeks now?
Vincent, yes, this has been an operation that's been in the works for months now. And just last week, the last of the Iraqi brigades needed for this operation finished their training. And of course, the Iraqi Prime Minister announced the start of the operation just today. But this is the early going. And while it's going well, Pentagon officials say that's been pretty much expected. The fighting, while there has been some resistance, has been on the outskirts, and they expect that it will get more difficult, and the resistance will get even stronger as they move closer and closer into the city center itself.
Now, Jeff, we know that the U.S. is providing mainly air support to the fighters there in Iraq. Describe for us how critical this is.
The air support has been critical, and not just in Mosul, but in the entire conflict. Talking to militia leaders on the ground, battalion leaders on the ground, no matter what the force, they all say the availability of that U.S. air power gives a tremendous psychological advantage. Of course, it also gives a great tactical advantage. The most recent strikes, a heavy bombardment of Mosul occurring over the last couple of days, has targeted the network of tunnels. It's targeted power generators, solar panels, trying to cut off power, trying to hit tactical units that the Islamic State is preparing to fight the battle of Mosul. So all of this has been going on for weeks now, trying to soften up the Islamic State, soften up its positions in Mosul. Still, officials have been warning for weeks it's going to be difficult. At least some officials with Operation Inherent Resolve, the coalition, saying there's no doubt in their minds that Islamic State is going to try to turn the city into hell on earth.
And indeed, that is the concern among many, that there could be high civilian casualties. What are you hearing from the Pentagon there?
The Pentagon has been talking with some NGOs, also exclusively and heavily with the Iraqi government and the Iraqi military. Civilian casualties, a huge concern. And aid groups are especially worried because there seems to have been a change in the approach. Initially, there was a focus on trying to create some safe corridors so that civilians would have a way to exit the city safely, avoid some of the fighting. Over the last week, that emphasis has shifted to now where the Iraqi forces have been telling these aid groups, these humanitarian groups that are trying to prepare, that they want the civilians to stay in place.
Okay.
The aid groups worry that's going to put them directly in harm's way, possibly make them available as human shields.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for your reporting there. That's VOA's Jeff Selden reporting live from the Pentagon. Now, South Sudan appears to be on the verge of a renewed civil war following a declaration of war by the opposition group led by ousted First Vice President Riek Machar. The United Nations mission in South Sudan has reported heavy artillery and gunfire exchanges between the SPLA and the SPLA in opposition. David Lemuria has this report.
In South Sudan, fighting has continued for weeks in various parts of the country, killing hundreds of civilians and displacing thousands amid a looming humanitarian catastrophe. Fighting involving the use of artillery and heavy gunfire has continued in the towns of Lair and Ye. Civilians have been targeted and killed along ethnic lines. South Sudan's government, however, says it has not attacked rebels' positions, alleging the current fighting is led by unknown gunmen.
These rebel groups, these terrorists who are terrorizing the civil population on these roads, are people who have decided to cause havoc in the civil population so that there is no stability.
South Sudan's former First Vice President Riek Machar has continued to call on opposition forces within the country to mount armed resistance to the government of President Salva Kiir. Machar fled the country amidst the outbreak of fighting in Juba between government and opposition forces in July 2016, on the eve of the country's 5th independence anniversary. Thousands were killed and at least 2 million civilians displaced. In the capital, Juba, it's business as usual, but the impact of July's violence is vividly clear. The country's economy is facing more than 600% inflation. Prices of basic goods in the market have shot up fivefold, far beyond the reach of many South Sudanese.
Let them sit down urgently and meet and tell us the way forward. After these incidents, what is next? Because up to now in the streets, in the normal citizens, people are feeling that the peace agreement have come to an end, though we are aware that Transitional Government of National Unity have met at the level of the Council of Ministers, but we need to hear from the principals. What is the way forward?
The United Nations Security Council voted to deploy an additional 4,000-strong troops to protect civilians, foreign nationals, and key government installations.
We don't want to enter into disputes between the various parties, but we as the international community want to promote the peace agreement. We also are speaking to members of the transitional government. We believe the peace agreement is alive, not dead. It is something which needs to be built and, in some cases, to be rebuilt.
South Sudan's government says it welcomes the move by the UN Security Council, but wants to have a say on which countries contribute forces to UN peacekeeping missions in the country. The United Nations currently has 12,500 peacekeepers in the country, with a mandate to protect civilians taking refuge in UN compounds across South Sudan.
David Lemuria reporting from South Sudan. Now, on a more positive note, a group of Nigerian parents was reunited Sunday with 21 schoolgirls kidnapped by militants more than 2 years ago. There were tears of joy and dancing at the church service in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, as daughters saw their parents and siblings for the first time in some 2.5 years. The schoolgirls, now young women, were among over 200 female students taken from their school in Chibok in the remote northeastern Borno state, where Boko Haram has waged a 7-year insurgency aimed at creating an Islamic state, killing thousands and displacing more than 2 million people. Boko Haram released 21 of the women on Thursday after the Red Cross and the Swiss government brokered a deal with the group. The girls were flown to Abuja, Nigeria's capital, but it took days for the parents to arrive from the remote region.
Thank you, and thank you all. I never expected to see my daughter again, and I pray for those girls still left behind, that God will bring them back safely, the same way our own daughter came back alive.
Authorities said in May one of the missing girls had been found, and President Muhammadu Buhari vowed to rescue the others. In the past days, the Nigerian military has been carrying out a large-scale offensive in the Sambisa forest, a stronghold of Boko Haram, which last year pledged loyalty to the Islamic State militant group. Boko Haram controlled a swathe of land around the size of Belgium at the start of 2015, but Nigerian army, aided by troops from the neighboring countries, has recaptured most of the territory. The group still stages suicide bombings in the northeast as well as in neighboring Niger and Cameroon. Boko Haram published a video in August apparently showing recent footage of dozens of the kidnapped girls and said some had been killed in airstrikes. Nigeria's Information Minister Lai Mohammed said plans were already underway to get the remaining students out.
This is only the first step in what we believe will be the total liberation and release of all remaining girls. Already from phase 2, and we are already in discussions. But of course, you know, these are very delicate negotiations. There are some promises we made also about the confidentiality of the entire exercise, and we intend to keep them.
The militant group has kidnapped hundreds of men, women and children, but the kidnapping of the Chibok girls brought it worldwide attention. In the last few months, Buhari has said his government was prepared to negotiate with Boko Haram over the release of the girls. Well, the Kenyan government is embroiled in a protracted legal battle with conservationists over the proposed construction of the standard gauge railway. Africa 54's Esther Githu-Yuwat reports.
The deal to construct the railway was signed between Kenya and China in 2013, with Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta officially launching the construction.
Upon completion of the standard gauge railway line, transport costs in the region are expected to reduce by more than 60%. This in turn will spur expanded production and reduce the cost of goods and services. This dividend is the price we seek for East Africa.
But public protests against the agreement continues to grow, with conservationists saying it will encroach on the wildlife. Ben Olekoisaba is a native of Kenya and a social development expert at Clemson University in South Carolina.
Economically, it's a great project, but one of the greatest challenges we have in development in Africa is we do not do adequate groundwork, we do not do adequate environmental and social impact assessments, because most of our projects are based on a political cyclical process that after every 5 years, whoever comes on the throne would want to leave a landmark. That brings in a lot of unintended consequences, as you can see on the railway.
Construction of the railway would also cut a swath of 6 kilometers through Nairobi's National Park, disrupting the wildlife.
Nairobi National Park is a tragedy. The Maasai gave out that land to conserve as a national heritage. You know, getting the railway crossing that place will curtail wildlife movements. We'll definitely have to have, because it's a fast train, it's going to have problems about probably even killing some of the animals. I mean, it's going to disrupt the ecosystem. And of course, you know, it's also going to pass through individual people's lands. These communities were not consulted. It's going to have an impact on their livelihoods too.
Animal rights activists and conservationists have been united in staging protests, and there are several court cases pending against the construction of the standard gauge railway. Where are we at this point? Is this going to stop because of the protests, or is the railway going to be built as planned?
Definitely the government is going to push it down the throats of the people, because Kenya owes China $318 billion. It's going to be a very painful process for the government, for the investors, and for the communities that would want to be adequately involved in the design, in the plan, and even benefit sharing of the project.
You said there were no consultations, no groundwork done before the project started, and now there's all this disruption. What next? What is the middle ground in this project?
I believe if the government is serious, they need to invest in a consultative process.
Koisaba says if the courts rule in favor of constructing the railway, the consequences will be dire, and Kenya will lose the prestigious Nairobi National Park in the heart of the city that has been a source of tourism revenue for years. Esther Githu-Yuwat, VOA News, Washington.
Well, in the battle for the White House, with only 3 weeks left before Americans go to the polls, Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is telling supporters the election is rigged against him. As VOA's Michael Bowman reports, should Trump lose to Democrat Hillary Clinton, it remains to be seen whether he would concede or claim the election was stolen from him.
The concession speech is a time-honored tradition.
I have just called President Obama to congratulate him on his victory.
Losing candidates typically call for national unity after hard-fought and often bruising campaigns.
I pray that the president will be successful in guiding our nation.
Would Donald Trump be gracious in defeat? In the first presidential debate, he said he would accept the outcome of the election.
The answer is, if she wins, I will absolutely support her.
His message of recent days sounds markedly different.
This is a rigged system, folks.
Stung by a media firestorm over allegations of sexual misconduct, fueled by his own words as well as those of multiple accusers, Trump says he is the victim of a smear campaign to deny him the presidency.
The election is being rigged by corrupt media pushing false allegations and outright lies in an effort to elect Hillary Clinton president.
And he has issued veiled warnings about fraud at polling places.
So go and vote and then go check out areas, because a lot of bad things happen, and we don't want to lose for that reason.
He's blaming the media. He's blaming the GOP. He's saying that America can't run a fair election. He is swinging at every phantom of his own imagination because he knows he's losing.
But Trump backers say he has a point, that the news media have been more focused on controversies surrounding Trump than on wave after wave of revelations from WikiLeaks about Clinton's paid speeches to Wall Street and what are believed to be email communications within her campaign.
This election is being rigged by the national media, who are doing everything they can to suppress bad news about Hillary and everything they can to maximize bad news about Trump.
Agitation runs high among some of Trump's most ardent supporters, as his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, discovered at a recent campaign stop.
If Hillary Clinton gets in, I'm ready for a revolution, because we can't have her in.
Yeah, you don't say.
But I'm just saying it.
Some Republican leaders are uncomfortable with Trump's latest line of attack. A spokeswoman for House Speaker Paul Ryan said, quote, "Our democracy relies on confidence in election results, and the Speaker is fully confident the states will carry out this election with integrity." Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, how a unique form of insurance is helping protect East African herders from the ravages of drought. Stay with us.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover, because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Welcome back. Now, in northern Kenya and southern Ethiopia, households typically keep up to 100% of their productive assets in livestock. In times of severe drought, they lose most of their animals, and many are left destitute. That's because they have no insurance to protect them. Now, there is hope for them. Andrew Mude, a Kenyan economist, and his team have developed something called index-based livestock insurance, which is designed to change the fortunes of these livestock keepers. Andrew, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, start by just educating us a little bit what this index is all about.
Well, the index is a means to providing the risk management benefits of insurance to this population, a population of livestock herders living in the drylands of East Africa, 20 million strong of them, 50 million across sub-Saharan Africa. And essentially the biggest challenge they face is, as you said, their key productive asset gets knocked out by severe drought regularly. And this forces them into sedentarization and makes it very difficult for them to use their key source of livelihood to climb the ladder out of poverty and to prosperity. So the index uses satellite readings of forage availability on the ground. And since in these herding systems, livestock or the grass in the rangelands is really the only source of nutrition. So if the satellites can tell you how much grass has grown over a particular season, if the season is bad, there's forage scarcity, you compare that with previous seasons, because this satellite data is readily available across time and space, freely available, you can then trigger contracts that pay out to the pastoralists.
When people hear insurance, they expect payouts in case of loss. So what exactly, how does a farmer specifically benefit from this as an individual?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's exactly what insurance is supposed to do. When you have a situation of loss, then you get paid out. And when we started off, the type of insurance we're providing is what you'd call a livestock life insurance. It was to protect or to replace the asset upon event of loss, and that's when you'd receive your indemnity payments. So payments were made, for example, there was a large drought in 2011. Yeah. Payments were made then.
So who's paying?
Well, right now it's the insurance companies that are paying. Pastoralists themselves, they purchase the product, so they pay the cost of what we call the cost of the risk. And on top of that, the government and donors, the World Bank, USAID, DFID, the EU, Australians, they support the subsidy above that.
To what extent are these farmers buying into this? I mean, the whole concept for them must be very new. So how do you get through to them to convince them to buy?
Yeah, certainly it's quite new. Insurance is new. Satellites are new to them. So a big part of trying to convince them and ensure that you're catalyzing informed demand, that when they purchase, they know what they're purchasing, is education, is a campaign of learning. And so a lot of work has been done on that. And there's a critical mass of understanding. Another way that it helps is those early purchases of insurance. When payouts begin to happen, those neighbors who were sitting back waiting see the benefits and they start to purchase. So now we're seeing an increasing number of pastoralists purchasing this product, northern Kenya, southern Ethiopia, the government partnering with insurance companies to spread out the provision.
Is there also any form of education on, the need to reduce the numbers? Perhaps could be, perhaps farmers made to feel that they could be penalized for keeping just too many without consideration to the environment, to their space?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of work, complementary work, some of my colleagues doing to try and increase what we call marketed offtake. But actually, the insurance themselves, one of the reasons that pastoralists hold on to their livestock is because this is the only savings they have, only form of asset. And so the more they take into a drought, even though a drought will come and hit, the more they will get out of it and it will regenerate.
That's another form of insurance.
Exactly. But if you now have insurance, actually some of our studies are seeing that households with insurance are more likely to sell off more. And that's because they now have this other risk management mechanism and they don't have to insure on the hoof, so to speak.
All right. So let's hope, this really changes their way of life and also their
Thanks a lot.
Economic state of affairs. Thank you very much,
Thanks
Andrew, for joining us today and sharing with us. Andrew Mude is a Kenyan economist and also a co-developer of the index-based livestock insurance. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a celebration of all things cocoa in London. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, 21 of the missing Chibok schoolgirls reunite with their families after more than 2 years. In the Netherlands, Equatorial Guinea urges the UN court to halt French case against leader's son, accused of embezzlement and the misuse of millions of euros of public funds. In Senegal, security forces break up an opposition protest in the capital, Dakar, after demonstrators refused to follow an approved route for the march. Finally, in Ivory Coast, the main opposition coalition calls on voters to boycott a referendum on the adoption of a new constitution. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
You're back with Africa 54. I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick, and we've got some great stories trending for you this Monday. Starting in Cuba, new businesses there are popping up all over the island as it experiences an influx of tourists following a thaw in U.S.-Cuba relations. In Havana, you'll now find an all-female run bicycle hire and repair shop that also offers guided tours of the country. Hundreds of private businesses have sprung up across Cuba after it began limited economic liberalization 5 years ago. The recent arrival of the first commercial flight from the U.S. has signaled a new era in U.S.-Cuba travel. U.S. officials say you can expect to see 20 daily flights to Havana by the end of the year. We bet you've never seen a fashion show quite like this. Look at these intricate dresses and accessories. Why are they special? Well, they're made entirely of chocolate. At the International Chocolate Show in London, you can find the delicious treats in the most unexpected places and combined with unexpected ingredients. A big trend in the world of chocolate this year is a taste for the unusual. One exhibitor has mastered the art of surprise with mustard, lemon chutney and curry, which are designed to warm you up when it's cold outside. And with Christmas around the corner, there's a new holiday trend, a chocolate tree dripping with presents for each of your guests. And suddenly, I believe in Santa. And finally, why are these speed daters wearing surgical masks? Well, the company sponsoring the event says finding your soulmate is easier when you concentrate on what's inside rather than appearances, placing greater emphasis on personality. According to a national survey, people between the ages of 25 and 39 in Japan say the main reason they're still single is because they haven't met the right person yet. Participants say the masks also help boost confidence, another important quality in a potential soulmate. And of course, that is what is trending today. Back to you, Vincent.
So now, you'll tell me later whether you remove the dress and eat the chocolate after that. I can't understand this. But that's the show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings, Today Broke Africa. That's between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. Listen to U.S. President Barack Obama use this word when talking about Islamic militants.
So the bottom line is this. Our objective is clear, and that is to degrade and destroy ISIL so that it's no longer a threat, not just to Iraq, but also to the region and to the United States.
In our story, the word objective means a goal or aim. The president said the U.S. objective is to destroy the Islamic State militant group.
When used as an adjective, objective has a different meaning. It means to look at something with an open mind, free of emotion.
Now, the next time you hear the word objective, you will know what this news word means.